Halloween is just around the corner, and I have some great projects for you. 5 different Halloween projects, stenciling and stamping, and making some home decor, and also some gift items. So, the first one I'm doing is I am doing a pillow. It is a lumbar pillow, it's a pretty good sized pillow, and I am using a stencil, a big stencil, and a bunch of smaller stencils. And I am going to go ahead and I will link all of the products that I purchased that you can purchase online in the description. This paint is a chalk paint. It's acrylic chalk paint, and I mixed it with the Liquitex fabric medium, and that makes it a fabric paint, which you actually do not have to heat set, which makes it really good because this is an acrylic fabric. It's actually an outdoor fabric. I was able to find it at Joann Fabrics in this great orange, and I am going ahead and making a Halloween pillow. I'm Peggy, and welcome to the studio where we love to craft. And that's our first stencil. And I just pulled it off so that you can see it. I'm actually going to go ahead and put it back down because all of the other stencils are going to be measured off of this one. This is the bigger one, and I am going to go ahead and measure it to make sure that they're all even or pretty even. Nothing is ever super, super exact. So I'm leaving that one on and lining up my faces, and I'm going to go ahead and stencil them in the same black color. These stencils all have to be taped off. As you can see, if you look at the stencils, the cuts go all the way to the edge. So you have to be real careful. You want to make sure that you do tape them off, or else you are going to get paint where you don't want paint. You see how I've taped them off pretty accurately. And this is just a perfect Halloween project because it is fun to do with kids, and it doesn't take a lot of time to do the stenciling because the stenciling is pretty big, and you can see I'm just using one color. So that's just simple frog tape that I'm using to tape it down, and I try to reuse it over and over. I tape one of these at a time and paint them, and then at the end I go ahead and pull it off in one big stencil because I am going to go ahead and do another one. I actually got almost a whole yard of this fabric for $2 during the Labor Day sale at Joann's. So I'm making two pretty big. These pillows are 13 by 21 out of this fabric that I got. And once I pull that background, all the stencil background off, you'll see there's lots of spaces on this pillow front. And I want to grunge it up a little bit, make it look a little bit more Halloweeny, a little bit eerie. So I am going to use a Tim Holtz burlap stencil. And I use this stencil a lot for art journaling, but it's also perfect to use on fabric. And it is the burlap stencil, so it looks like burlap when you stencil through it. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit here and a little bit there, arbitrarily all over the background of my pillow front. Once I had an adequate amount of distressing all over the front of the pillow, I went ahead and added a mini pom-pom fringe, which I sewed around the whole edge before I sewed the pillow together. And it added just the perfect little finishing touch to my pillow. Project number 2 is another pillow, and this one is a little different in style. It is an 18 by 18 inch square pillow, and it has a Subway style stencil on it. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm taping it down. Again, you can't really see in this video, but there is a little bit of space between the letters and the end of the stencil. So there is a little bit of room there. You don't have to be quite so careful about getting paint on the edges of your stencil. So I'm starting again with the same orange paint, and I am just going through and stenciling this whole thing. And I'm using a 1-inch stencil brush, which is really nice to use when you're doing a lot of stenciling like this. You do have to be a little bit careful because it can hold a lot more paint than you may need. So I moved that a little bit because there's a piece of foam board in there. It's not quite big enough, and I need the foam board behind the boo when I do the boo. So the boo is just being done in black. And this pillow also, the paint is a chalk style paint, and what I'm doing, I am adding the Liquitex fabric medium, which turns it into a fabric paint. And I'm going to do that little pumpkin up on the top. And then what I'm going to do is a little different. I want that orange to be a shadow. So I'm going to move that stencil a little bit to create a shadow. Now I'm going to stencil this little pumpkin up at the top, and there she is, all done. Very next thing I am doing is I want some background. I want some texture. So I am using the IOD Chippy Paint stamp. I'm using some IOD black ink, and I am just going to stamp around this entire pillow before I do the shadow of the words. So I just keep on adding ink and stamping till I have the whole background covered. The IOD Chippy Paint stamp is been discontinued for quite a while, but I still think you can find one out there. It is definitely one of my go-to stamps for adding texture and background. And now that I have all of the texture on, I am going to do the shadow. And to do a shadow, you take the stencil and you put it over where you have already stenciled and just move it about 1/4 of an inch to the right. And then you will have the orange as a shadow, and the black that I am going to stencil on will then be the main color. And again, I'm going to tape it off because I do not want any of the paint to get onto the work that I've already done, because this is the final step. And all the stenciling is exactly the same. Put some paint on your brush, offload most of it, and then just swirl your paint around on top of the stencil until you have the whole thing covered. And I'm just dabbing this and going up the whole stencil. And once I'm all done, I'm going to remove it, and I am going to have a beautiful pillow with an orange shadow around the black words of this subway Halloween subway sign stencil. I know it's hard to see the shadow, the orange shadow. It's a little bit subtle, but it actually makes a huge difference and really makes this, it makes it look very custom, the pillow, once it's all done. And I went ahead and did a little bit of shadow behind the pumpkin too, just for continuity in the pillow when it was all done. And there it is, all done. Our next project is these cute little gift bags, which are also stenciled. So I put a piece of cardboard in every one of the gift bags before I stencil it, because it's muslin and it's pretty thin fabric, and you do not want the stencil paint to bleed through. I have these 30 different little 3x3-inch stencils that I'm going to just pick some and make some gift bags. Because the design on these is also cut right to the edge, even though they're tiny, I am taping them down and before I stencil. And these little gift bags, I'm also going to do the same exact shadow. It just adds so much interest to these little gift bags. So that first one's a little pumpkin, and I'm wiping it off right away and gonna go right over it with the black paint to give it that shadow. I always try to use this frog tape over and over again. It's kind of expensive stuff, and it's good to be able to reuse it. There we are, and there's my first one, my little pumpkin with the bats. And I also did a truck, Happy Halloween, and there's a 31. So those are our little gift bags, which we actually put Halloween treats in, and we give them out to some of our most special Halloween trick-or-treaters. And now we come to the end of our stenciling. It's a trick-or-treat bag to stash your candy in. And I am stenciling right on this bag. These are pretty sturdy bags. They are I'm pretty sure they are made out of polyester, but they take the paint really, really well. So I am stenciling a spider web, and I'm being kind of not careful to get the paint all even. I kind of want it a little uneven. I want it a little light and dark. And that's how it came out. And that's spiderweb stencil is not available right now, even though I think it's a really cool stencil. So the next stencil I'm putting on there is a trick or treat stencil, and I'm starting that one again with the orange, and then I'm going to go over it with black to create a shadow. The shadow made a huge difference with this trick or treat stencil because it's going over a gray paint. It didn't cover totally. So just having the little bit of an orange shadow makes it look really nice when you put the black over it. You really wouldn't have seen the trick or treat without having the black over and just having that little orange shadow. So to create the shadow, we take the same stencil, we put it over where we've already stenciled, and then we move it 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch over to the right, and that way we will have a shadow behind what we're stenciling right now. And when you are trying to do a shadow, it's really important to make sure that none of your paint goes underneath the stencil, because that will make the shadow not look as professional as if you just have that subtle color coming out from behind. What is a spider web without a spider? So I am adding the final touch to this bag by stenciling a little spider up at the top. Super easy, just stenciling him black. And then what I'm doing is once I'm all done stenciling him and he dries a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of gold interest by maybe making his eyes bright yellow, and also doing the same on some of the other parts, the putting a little yellow eyes on those bats that are flying around on the side. And then once I do that, it is all done and it is ready to be a trick-or-treat bag for a trick-or-treater. Project number 5 is some Halloween gift tags, and they aren't stenciled. It's a free download. So you can download it and print it on some cardstock, and then we're going to cut them out, and I'm going to show you what I do with mine. Once you have your download, it's cut it out time. And I'm using fussy cut scissors. You don't really have to. These are really not fussy cuts, they're just straight lines. But those are the scissors that I grabbed. Um, And I'm just cutting as close to that edge as I can because I want to glue them together. So I want them to be exactly the same size. And you need a hole punch so that you can cut that, punch out that hole at the top. And you also need some kind of string or twine or something that you can use for the top of the tag. And I am using a kind of a fancy embroidery floss just to kind of make it silky and real pretty looking. The glue that you would use to glue them together would be a card making glue, a paper or a paper glue, and the reason being you do not want to use something that's going to make the paper ripple. So a card glue is going to dry pretty fast and it's not going to ripple. It's not going to have a lot of water in it. And I just glue them back to back and wait for them to dry, and they dry pretty fast. I'm basically giving these to kids as bookmarks, so I don't put a lot of raised up um, ephemera or anything on the front, but I do go over that boo with a glitter pen, which makes it really stand out and makes it just a little more fun. So I use just a hair over a yard of thread. When it's this thin, make a loop, stick the loop through the hole, and then pull the rest of the thread back through the loop and cut it and trim it if you want to. And there it is, yellow and orange, and I've used all sorts of colors. Just a simple bookmark. And this is a glitter pen by Pent Art, and I'm just going over the boo with the glitter pen. And like I said, all it does is it just gives it a fancy element. It just glitzes it up just a little bit. And it dries pretty flat, but you do need to let it dry. I let them dry overnight because if you touch it, you will smear it. And then I'm using an ice crystal one also. And that one is a little harder to get it into the letters perfectly, but it worked. So once I have them all done, like I said, I let them dry, and I've used all different colors. There's red, there's gold, there's silver, and all different color glitter pens. And there they are, ready for gift giving.